Good evening, I'm John Silva. The looting and mayhem continues in Los Angeles. The local reaction is coming in as well regarding the acquittal of the 4 officers in the Rodney King case. Some Central High School students we caught up with today say they were outraged at the verdict. They say they can't understand an acquittal with all the evidence right there on the videotape. Bridgeport State Representative Christopher Caruso says legislation in Hartford regarding illegal dumping gives municipalities more clout in dealing with the problem of littering. It also aids municipal enforcement by allowing seizure of vehicles involved in the acts of illegal dumping. The minimum expenditure requirement for education in Bridgeport is down, and that poses some concerns for School Superintendent James Connolly. He says he'd like to sit down with the chairman of the Budget and Appropriations Committee and the mayor and talk about restoring funds back into their proposed $121 million education budget. State job fund that pays jobless benefits to Connecticut people remains deeply in debt. The state legislature doesn't plan to act this year to tackle the $470 million deficit. One senator says business and labor interests could not agree on compromise legislation. And a Senate panel is expected to go one step further in resurrecting the Seawolf sub-program. Under the president's plan, only 1 Seawolf would be restored. A proposal in the House calls for 2 Seawolves, while a Senate committee is calling for 3 subs. Here's the latest update now from the WICC Weather Center. We'll have clouds, scattered showers early, then some partial clearing around midnight. 45 for a low, mostly sunny, breezy, and pleasant for Friday. I'm John Silva on your hometown news and information leader, WICC.
Everybody, and welcome back, folks. Tom Snyder with you here on the Thursday night radio show for April 30th of 1992 out of ABC in Los Angeles, California. I do not know how long we will be on the air from Los Angeles tonight because we are in severe distress here. This city is reeling tonight after 24 hours of naked rioting by hooligans, by thugs, by hoodlums, by looters, by arsonists, and by murderers. The city is in disarray. And what is troubling is the police, in many cases, are not to be seen patrolling our streets and restoring order to our town. More on that coming up. We intended to program this evening people related to the Rodney King verdict yesterday and to the tragic events that have taken place here in Southern California over the past 24 hours. We are not going to be able to do that as well as I'd hoped because we have lost the phone lines here. Pacific Bell, General Telephone, and the other carriers that serve Southern California are also suffering great distress tonight because everybody is trying to call in here from around the country. So far, 17 people are reportedly dead. 450 are hurt. There are almost 1,100 fires burning throughout the Los Angeles area. We are awaiting the presence of some 4,000 National Guard troops on the streets of Los Angeles, and where these troops are is a puzzlement to all of us who live here. We are told that they are deployed throughout the city, yet in all the coverage that's gone on. And 7 television stations have been on the air for the past 24 hours with rape, riot, murder, and arson. For the past 24 hours, we have seen hardly any police officers on the streets, and up until 2 hours ago, no members of the National Guard. So where they are, I couldn't tell you. In all of this, 24 hours of rioting, of looting, of arson on a grand scale. By grand, I mean enormous, because it is now spreading throughout the greater Los Angeles area. The rioters are in Hollywood. They are in Beverly Hills. I have a report that they are in the San Fernando Valley. So far as South Central Los Angeles is concerned, which was the center of the activity last night, forget it. That area looks like a war zone. $200 to $250 million in damage that they can count so far. In all of this, only 400 people have been arrested. Anyway, the phone lines are down. We had hoped to be able to talk to a member of the jury who has been talking to everybody today. Her name is being kept anonymous, and I understand that. This juror is said to be sick over the aftermath of the decision, but she claims that the videotape shown the jury in the Rodney King case was substantially more than the 81 seconds transmitted around the world over and over and over again. Anyway, she won't be on. We plan to have Ted Koppel here joining us from Washington for the media's role in all of this, and I'll have more on that later. If we keep it here in Southern California, that's not going to be happening. And the same can be said of Jonathan Alter of Newsweek magazine, who was to have joined us later in this hour. But again, I have no phone communications. Now, the only thing I might have is the 800 number, and that's where you all come in. I need you to start dialing us here now at 800-756-0852. The line is open here. If you don't get through, it means that even that link between you and us here is gone, and we'll send this whole thing back to New York at the half-hour mark, or possibly sooner if we can't generate phone communications. Anyway, I hope you start dialing here. We're at 800-756-0852. And after these messages, we'll see what we can do. We'll find out what we can't do, and we'll go on from there. Let me just alert New York that we may be sending it back there very soon tonight. There is a curfew taking effect in Los Angeles at 7:36 Pacific time, and we're supposed to be off the streets by then, so if we're going to send it back to New York, I want to do it quickly and get my people and myself home before the police hopefully take over the streets. Now, I'm told the phones are working, so we'll keep the fingers crossed, and we'll be back from Los Angeles after these messages. The phone lines are back. I don't know what happened here, but praise Jesus, the phone lines are back. So we will have the member of the jury who was involved in yesterday's decision. We may have Ted Koppel and later Jonathan Alter, and we've got a bunch of listeners on the line. Folks, if you're waiting on our switchboard here, it's going to be a while before I get to you. If you want to hang up, I understand. If you want to stay with us, we will get to you during our program time tonight from 10 to 1 a.m. Eastern Time, 7 to 10 Pacific. But I have some interview work I must do here, so you're going to be waiting. You can listen to the show if you want, or you can go listen to it on the radio and come back. But it's going to be a while before I get to you, and I hope that you understand. Now on the line is a member of the jury, which yesterday found the 4 defendants, for all intent and purposes, not guilty on all counts. This woman has asked that we keep her identity anonymous, which we are happy to do. And let me put her on our line and say good evening. Madam Juror, thanks for coming on tonight.
Good evening.
Let me ask you about your own thoughts here the past 24 hours. You're a resident of Southern California. You've watched this nonsense with the rest of us, and just your own thoughts on this.
I am simply appalled at the vast destruction, the vandalism, the murdering that's taking place before our eyes. I cannot imagine what these people are thinking about.
You said earlier today in another interview that I heard that you believe that had the jury voted not to acquit these men, had they returned a verdict of guilty, that the same thing would have happened. Am I quoting you correctly?
Yes, you are, and I do truly believe that.
Why do you feel that way?
I don't know. I just feel that it's an accident waiting to happen. It seems too closely choreographed to not have been arranged ahead of time. Mm-hmm. The actions all over the southern part of the state, all over the country, actually. It just seems to me that it's totally arranged, and it's appalling. What would these people be doing if we didn't have policemen to depend upon?
Well, they'd be doing exactly what they're doing now. They're looting and burning this city. And in my view, the police are standing by and watching it happen for reasons that I can't fully understand. I don't know if you've noticed that, but there seems to be very little intervention and confrontation by the authorities with these hoodlums who have taken over the streets of this city.
It seems to be that the police are so totally outnumbered. That's the reason the National Guard was called in, hoping to cool this thing down a little bit. If it doesn't, I don't know where it's going.
Well, it's going to go to anarchy. That's where it's going to go.
Well, it simply must. What else do we have?
Let me ask you about the events of yesterday here. Mm-hmm. And I want you to understand that I don't intend for this to be a confrontational interview in any way. Because,
I hope not.
No, because you and other members of the jury have been through hell on this thing.
We have indeed. Long, tedious hours.
A lot of people wonder, and I'm sure you can understand their wonder. How could you view the videotape that we saw, the 81 seconds, mm-hmm. in which this man is beaten like an animal, Rodney King, mm-hmm. and acquit these officers and say to them, in effect, it's okay, you did right? That's a lot of people, including myself, had trouble with that verdict when first announced. So tell me what you and other members of the jury saw and what you know that we don't know.
I, too, was appalled with the film on first viewing, and through every viewing, I was totally appalled. However, we had to look at all of the case as it was presented to us, all of the evidence. Rodney King was driving erratically. He was under felony chase. They were chasing him on the freeways up to 115 miles an hour. He went into the surface streets. More police people were called in. He selected the place he wanted to stop his car. That's where he stopped indeed. He refused to be arrested by the police. He threw off 4 policemen off his body when they were trying to maintain him and get him under arrest. It looked like he was beaten horribly, but if you had seen the medical reports from the hospitals where he was looked at, had you seen the pictures of him made shortly after the incident, you could not see the signs of what appeared to be a bunch of horrible strokes that were given to him. So the only conclusion you can come to is that the waving batons were not all connecting. Otherwise, he could not have appeared in the condition that he was. He had one small bone broken in his right leg, and the right cheek up around his eye had some breaks in it, and that appeared to be, from all the evidence we were presented with and from the video that we saw. When we slow it down to single frame, the video is very bad, but you can still pick out the features. It shows at one instance there where he just literally fell like a tree falling over. Didn't put his hands out to check his fall at all. And the head is the heavier part of the body. It's the part that connects first. And you could see the head bounce down and way up and down again. So that was apparently when that damage was done. Not from the batons of the officers. They're trained to use the baton if they have to. The 2 other black people that were in the car, when the car stopped, they got out and they submitted to arrest without implication. He's the one, Rodney King was the one that selected to be combative, to continue to be combative throughout all of this thing that looks so torturous to us.
If I could interrupt you for a second,
yeah.
You know, all I've seen is the videotape as shown by the television networks and stations. Right. I've not seen the slow-mo. I haven't slowed it down.
And you're not seeing all of the film either.
Now, what am I not seeing? What don't I see?
You're seeing the portion in the front. You're not seeing part of it's so jiggly-wiggly that you can't tell what's going on.
But, like, is there videotape? Was that camera running before the 81 seconds starts? Do we see Rodney King resisting arrest if we were to see that?
No.
We don't.
No, we don't see that.
Anyway, the part that's been shown to the general population, ma'am, it appears like he's taking an awful beating.
It does indeed appear that way, and if he was being as severely beaten as he appears to be, his body could not possibly appear like it did in the still photographs that were shot, some by the police department and some by a professional photographer that was hired by his attorney that's planning on instigating another lawsuit, I believe.
If my memory serves me correctly, and I'm not trying to be confrontational, believe me, but I remember him being pushed out of the hospital in a wheelchair following the incident, and it looked to me like he'd been hit by a Mack truck. Now,
I believe I saw that too. It's usually hospital procedure that anybody leave in a wheelchair, whether they're ambulatory or not. If they're leaving the hospital, they leave in a wheelchair. However, they did drive him from one hospital to the other police unit hospital in the back of a patrol car. They would not and could not have done that had he been seriously damaged.
I have to pause here for a station break. I would like you to stay for 5 more minutes if you would, or if it's not convenient, I would understand. I'll leave that up to you.
I'll stay.
Thank you. We will continue with a member of the jury in the Rodney King beating case here in Los Angeles. We'll continue with Madam Juror right after these messages from the local stations. Can you understand how they might feel that the acquittal yesterday and the previous decision in the manslaughter case might make it seem to them as if white America has no regard for black life?
I can appreciate that. I don't know if the former case you were talking about, but in Rodney King's case, they've been so totally, thoroughly brainwashed with this little bit of film that it's easy for me to understand how nobody could understand how that verdict could come in. They needed to be in the trial. They needed to be in the deliberation room with us. They need to look at all of the reams of evidence that we looked at. And if you go through all of the information carefully, there's no other verdict you could possibly reach. And I do think you must take into account the amount of actual physical damage that Rodney King went under. Right now, I'm wondering perhaps why he doesn't talk to the people to try to set this thing aside. I heard him interviewed shortly after the incident on the television. The original incident in March of last year. And he seems to be a very gentle person. I think he just happened to be full of liquor and perhaps involved with drugs, and he did what he did. He was relatively sure he would be returned to prison, being caught under the circumstances he was caught under, and I think he merely wanted to get away from the situation. But I think even he has to be totally appalled with the activities that's been going on since then.
Many people wonder why Rodney King was not called to testify by the prosecution in the case that was presented before you. Your own feelings on that, and what difference it would have made had he appeared. Did the jury feel that perhaps there was something they didn't know because he did not testify, or did the jury feel that because he was not called, he may have had something to hide? And I know I'm asking speculative questions here, but I don't know how else to frame them.
Right. Well, of course, 20/20 hindsight is great.
Amen.
We individually did wonder within ourselves, I'm sure, why he was not called. The indication was early on into the trial that he would be a witness, but it was not an item that we could consider in the deliberation room because it wasn't something that happened, and so we couldn't look at it. And that was just not a point that we could look at. In hindsight, I would like to have seen him. I would like to have listened to his comments about what happened that evening, what he was trying to achieve, or if he knew what he was trying to achieve. According to the expert witnesses, he had a humongous amount of alcohol in his system when they took the test later for alcohol. Most people couldn't function with that much alcohol in their bodies, but he obviously was functioning. He was driving a vehicle. Even when his companions tapped him on the shoulder, giving every indication they were asking him to pull over, he continued to drive, and he indeed stopped when he decided to, and he stopped the police action when he decided to. But even when he decided to stop, put his hands up behind his head, and indicated he wanted to surrender, then he continued to fight after that with the officers all during the handcuffing process. And when that was completed, he was thoroughly cuffed with 2 sets of cuffs so that he couldn't break them apart, which I guess does happen with PCP involvement.
Mm-hmm. Anyway, I'll tell you, ma'am, my time is gone here. I want to thank you for coming on. I applaud the fact that you will come on and talk about this very unpopular decision. I understand your request for anonymity, and I thank you for your time tonight.
I'm simply trying to help put a little levity into the situation.
I understand, ma'am, and I appreciate your doing that, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Bye-bye. We will continue with Ted Koppel out of ABC in Washington, Jonathan Alter of Newsweek magazine from New York, and then on to your phone calls. I'll try and get to you as quickly as I can here. I know all of you waiting on the line have comments and questions on this extremely difficult day in America. Even though this is taking place mainly in Southern California, this is not a great day for the U.S. of A. for reasons that are all too obvious. We'll continue after station identification. You're listening to Service 60 WICC. We are back and joined by ABC News' Ted Koppel, who's back in Washington preparing for Nightline tonight. I called Ted earlier today, our office did, and he's come on tonight, even though he's on the air live in less than 1 hour. Ted, I appreciate it. Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, Tom. We've got kind of a bad line, and I don't hear you too well, but...
Well, I'll talk up a little bit, but this is, I'm afraid, my friend, this is the best we're going to have.
Well, then I'll have to settle for it, right?
Okay, yeah. Incidentally, I know you were out here recently when you were on with Johnny Carson, which, by the way, was a terrific spot. That was awfully good television that you did that night. And I was just looking at the monitor here. The fires are now burning on Hollywood Boulevard. This is really getting out of hand here, I'll tell you, and all of us who live here are terrified.
Well, I don't blame you. It is a terrible thing to watch happen, and those of us, Tom, like you and me, who are old enough to remember what happened in the mid and late 60s, it's something we don't want to see this country have to live through again. Apparently there are bad fires now also in San Francisco. The National Guard has been placed on standby by the governor of Georgia. Maynard Jackson, the mayor of Atlanta, has placed a 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew on the city of Atlanta now. So there is this sense of little sparks that are flying all over the country, and I'm afraid that there really is a potential for this thing flaring up all over.
You have to ask yourself, as we have here all day, what has this got to do with the acquittal of the 4 police officers yesterday? This is not protest that we're seeing. This is civil insurrection. This is rebellion.
It is, and in fact, I was just, when you and I were connected, I was just working on my introduction to the program tonight, and one of the sad things I'm trying to write about it is the fact that neither side gets it. Neither side understands the anger and the anguish of the other side, and there seem to be fewer and fewer honest brokers around who can bridge the gap between the two. On the one hand, you are quite right. I don't think that the verdict in and of itself, not only do I not think, it doesn't justify this kind of violence, but the people who are engaging in this violence, some of them couldn't care less. They're just looking for a good excuse.
That's correct.
But the genuine anger that you see reflected and hear reflected among some of these young people is something that says, the system has let me down again. The system has let me down so many times in the past, and everybody keeps saying, have faith, have faith, have faith, faith. Eventually it's going to work for you too. And this by some of these folks as just being another example of the system letting him down. But I must tell you, and I've now talked to 2 of the jurors, talked to one last night, we're going to have another one joining us live on the program tonight. I am absolutely convinced, at least that those 2 jurors that I have spoken to gave it absolutely their best shot, tried to do what they felt the law required them to do.
Well, I just finished with one here who is asking to remain anonymous, although I suspect the individual is probably the same one you spoke to last night. And I come away from 15 minutes with her, Ted, convinced that they acted based upon the evidence presented to them in court.
Not only that, but the one we're going to put on tonight told me earlier, we talked for about 20 minutes this evening. Excuse me.
Yeah.
She said she came out of the trial and went into the jury room for the deliberations on the verdict, feeling that she had to find these people guilty, and then feeling herself hemmed in by the judge's instructions. Essentially the instructions that we've all seen and heard 100 times in television programs and movies and so on. You have to consider the evidence. If you are left with reasonable doubt about the guilt of these people, you have to give them the benefit of that doubt, and as long as there is reasonable doubt, you cannot find them anything other than not guilty. Mm-hmm. This particular woman apparently agonized with it for days, fought with the other jurors over it, and gradually came to the conclusion that there was nothing that she could do but find them not guilty, given the rules. And the way she put it makes perfectly good sense. She said, look, if you don't like those rules, change the rules, but those are the rules that we have to operate under, and don't blame us for having to operate under the rules that have been set up.
Exactly. Let me get to rules for covering riot and insurrection. Last night here, there was a reporter in a helicopter flying over Los Angeles at around 5:30, 5:35. This individual said, well, we're flying over the south central Los Angeles, and oddly enough, we don't see any fires yet. To me, that's very disturbing. That's almost saying to people, look, we've got the cameras turned on. You can start any time now.
Yeah.
And I would just like your own thoughts here. on what we gain, I mean, Ted, there's been a media circus here today. There have been 7 television stations broadcasting fires now for 24 hours, nonstop, showing people looting, kids looting, whites, blacks, Hispanics, walking into Sears, setting fast food restaurants on fire, and it's been on everywhere, and I have the feeling that maybe we ought to stop advertising this riot.
Look, on the one hand, Tom, you're absolutely right. It turns it into a Roman circus. It is horrible. It is a terrible system. And when all is said and done, point to another system anywhere in the world that is an improvement on it. You can't, on the one hand, say it's a free press and anybody can get into it, and then on the other hand say, well, I'm qualified to cover it, but you, Tom, are not.
I understand.
Or you're qualified to cover it, but the guy from some local station in Los Angeles is not. And there's another side to this. Let us even say, for the sake of argument, that we were able to reach some kind of an agreement and say, none of us should cover this. We should just stay away from it and not cover it all. It is just as possible that there would then be rioting because people would say, wait a second, you're trying to hush this up. There's a conspiracy of silence. God knows what's going to happen here if the cameras aren't here to watch it. We're going to be brutalized because there's no one there from the press. You can't predict to me that things are going to be any better if you remove all the cameras. And as long as you allow everyone to be there, you're going to have different gradations of professionalism in how they cover it. Some are going to cover it very, very well, very cautiously, very professionally, and people, particularly when they're doing live coverage, are occasionally going to make misstatements. I've done it, you've done it.
Of course.
To the best of it.
Of course, I understand that, but let me tell you what's missing in Los Angeles, my friend, and that is perspective. We have no perspective on this thing because we don't have anybody viewing it from afar. For example, we didn't see you last night, pal. You didn't play in Los Angeles.
I understand.
We don't see Peter Jennings or Tom Brokaw or Dan Rather. We don't see the network specials. All we see is what's happening on our own main street, blown up out of all proportion. Last night, for example, television covered this by showing fires burning in the night. There wasn't one statement from anybody in black or white leadership on television last night. There was precious little of the mayor, of the city council leadership, of the police chief. All we saw was fires as if that was the whole story, and I think that's unfair.
Tom, you've always been a sensible man, and I think you make a very rational point. Ultimately, again, what can you do? Folks can pick up the phone.
You bet.
They can call their television stations. They can call their radio stations. Say, look, you guys are working your hearts out, and we appreciate it. But you want to know something? We'd like to see a little perspective. We're not going to go away just because you leave us for half an hour to switch to Dan Rather or Brokaw or Jennings or Koppel or whoever it may be. We would like to see what the nation thinks about what's going on here. And believe me, a couple of hundred phone calls like that, I think they'll start listening.
Oh, I think you're absolutely right. Incidentally, would it be too much to expect? I'm just wondering how to phrase this because I don't want to impugn anybody's reputation. I'm sensitive to those things. I really think that Jesse Jackson would do us all a larger good by not going on your program and others, but rather by coming out here and going on the streets and telling these people to go home.
Well,
I mean, I think he pours gas on it, Ted. I really do.
You want to know something, Tom? I was talking to a young gang member on the phone from Los Angeles earlier today, and he was telling me, we're tired of hearing from the clergymen. The clergymen have been talking to us for a long time now. They've never done anything for us. We don't believe them. We don't have any faith in them. I'm not sure it would even do a great deal of good.
Well, you make a point. You make a point. It's very, very frustrating. Anyway, I know you have to go to work, and so you're talking to another juror tonight, and what else?
Well,
I mean, we won't see it here, but I'd just like to know.
Well, for the rest of your audience around the country, we have been following events both here in Washington and on the streets of South Central Los Angeles, and we're going to be sort of cutting back and forth throughout the course of the day to show you how the day went. Sort of almost on an hour-by-hour basis in Washington and in L.A.
Are you aware of the fact that the police have done very little here today?
Well, I thought, and then I heard someone say, and forgive me, Peter Jennings, I think it was on your show, that there had been over 1,000 arrests?
No. 400.
400.
Yeah, 400. I mean, Ted, these people are looting stores, and the cops stand there and watch them do it. I don't understand it.
can you imagine what would happen if they really started doing mass arrests? I mean, what is what kind of a confrontation are you likely to have then? I worry when I think of those young men in their National Guard uniforms parading through the streets.
Except,
as I say, we've seen it all before. I don't want to see it again.
Me neither. I thank you for coming on. I know you're on deadline. Be well, and thank you again, sir.
Okay, Tom.
Good night now.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Ted Koppel, ABC News, Nightline from Washington, and some thoughts on the events of this day. We'll be right back after these messages from the local stations.
You're on the radio show, and I'm Tom Snyder on Service 60 WICC.
We are back and joined by Jonathan Alter, media critic and senior editor for Newsweek magazine, speaking to us tonight from New York City. Jonathan, nice to have you on again. Good evening.
Thank you, Tom.
You've been watching along with the rest of the country our day of trial here in Southern California. I don't know if you heard my conversation with Ted Koppel just concluded, but
Yes, I did.
some of us here are wondering about media. And I know there's freedom of speech, and I know we have freedom of expression and all this First Amendment protection that is very precious. But I wonder if media can go overboard sometimes in reporting something like this, where you are almost telling folks where to go to pick up a set of tires or a toaster or a television set.
Yeah, well, it is kind of a new, sinister form of a home shopping network. I don't mean to make a joke, but
I understand,
I think
but
it's a very, very sad day for this country in many ways. But you do have a situation where, essentially, television is attracting people into the streets. I saw some sound bites today from people who said that they were essentially out there because they had seen the action on television. Now, that doesn't mean that you could necessarily cover it any differently. It's a kind of a contradiction that's built into the whole structure of media, that by covering things, you do sometimes fan the flames. The thing about this entire story is that television has been the oxygen of the story, the way oxygen is necessary for a fire, from the beginning. This was one of the most widely watched pieces of videotape in the entire history of the medium of television, going back to the beginning of this case.
You mean the beating of Rodney King?
The beating of Rodney King has to rank up there with perhaps the explosion of the space shuttle, the clip of the Zapruder film, perhaps, and
the Hindenburg,
tiny handful of others.
Yeah, the Hindenburg disaster.
Right.
Yeah.
It's right up there. So from the very start, television has been embedded in this story.
Well, I don't suppose you can take television out of it. I mean, the press has a right as well as a responsibility. It's just that it's very, very difficult to live here and watch as television shows a Sears store, for example, at the intersection of Santa Monica Boulevard and Vermont being looted, and a half an hour later, more people are there. Ostensibly, they have watched this on television, and we have said, by the way, looters, here's how to get to Sears.
Well, that's just loony. I mean, there's simply no reason to do that. It doesn't add anything to the story to just in a mindless way say exactly where it's happening, because in journalism school you were told to always use addresses. Sometimes people take leave of their senses when they go out and cover a story of this kind, and that's unfortunate.
Mm-hmm.
There are these kind of deeper issues of what watching television does to us that this whole thing raises. I mean, my sense is that in the courtroom, seeing the tape over and over again did desensitize the jurors to exactly what was taking place. I still can't believe there was an acquittal. This tape is used at police academies in the country as an example of what not to do. All over this country now, this tape is being used. So the idea of them having behaved within police guidelines is crazy. So the question then becomes, how did the jurors look beyond this tape? And I think there might be something about just the sheer repetition of it. And it works for the rioters as well. The repetition of the violence made it easier for the jury to acquit, and the repetition of violence makes it easier for rioters to riot, because over time in their communities and in what they see on television, they are just desensitized to the implications of violence.
Well, as a matter of fact, there have been people on the streets of Los Angeles today saying such things as, well, the cops got away with beating up Rodney King. Why shouldn't we be allowed to get away with looting this store? Which, of course, is very faulty logic, but in their minds it makes perfect sense.
Yeah, and the logic, the whole notion of violence just doesn't have the shock value that it once had when you live in those communities.
Jonathan, I appreciate your being with us tonight. I thank you for your time, and I'm always glad to talk to you, especially so tonight. Thank you, my friend.
Thank you. Good luck.
All right, thanks. You too. Talk to you soon. Jonathan Alter from Newsweek magazine, and some thoughts on the carnage that is cruising through California, most of Los Angeles tonight. We will continue after these messages. We are back. I have just several minutes here before the end of the hour, and then I'll get to all of you on the toll-free exchange. You've been waiting very, very patiently for the past hour. I thank Ted Koppel and Jonathan Alter for their time tonight. I also thank Madame Juror for her time from the Los Angeles area, member of the panel that yesterday acquitted 4 Los Angeles police officers in the beating of Rodney King in March of 1991. Let me just give you some thoughts here on what these eyes are seeing on television. I mean, I'm seeing neighborhoods that are familiar in my life going up in flames here. This is not the ghetto burning. This is not Watts burning. This is Southern California burning. Hollywood Boulevard has been looted. There are flames at the corner of Hollywood and Vine. 2 radio stations are off the air in Southern California, KFI and its FM counterpart, KOST. They are located in a neighborhood which is heavily involved in the rebellion, and because of the safety of the employees being compromised, they were sent home earlier, and the radio stations have left the air. The neighborhood that Mayor Bradley lives in, Hancock Park, I believe Mayor Bradley lives there. It's one of the oldest and one of the nicest residential parts of old Los Angeles. Long before there was Bel Air, Westwood, Brentwood, and Pacific Palisades, Hancock Park, which is in what is now the Central City, is the location for some of the finest homes in Southern California. These are older, very substantial homes built 50 and 60 years ago. They have been through many refurbishings. They are all in splendid condition. In some cases, they are behind gates in guarded communities. Some of the homes are not going up in flames, but around them, fast food restaurants and mini malls and gasoline stations are going up in flames. Those pictures are on television. The looting, I'm told, has extended to parts of Beverly Hills. Parts of the San Fernando Valley are under alert. There were some reports of looting in Van Nuys. The city of L.A. is under curfew, yet the fires continue being set. And for some reason, the police stand and watch them being set. We are told that the National Guard is coming in, that they'll be on the streets tonight, 4,000 strong, to secure areas after the police have made them safe. Well, the police have made no areas of this city safe all day long. The police chief was on the air last night at 5:30 in the afternoon saying that should there be violence during the night, we have a plan to control the violence. We will not reveal it, but it will be taken care of. We are expecting no trouble tonight. And now this. Every public event in Los Angeles between now and May 3rd, all sporting events, theatrical concerts, you name it, have all been canceled because of the Southern California rebellion. On many of these same stations, we're coming right back. I'm TS. This is the Thursday night radio show out of ABC in Los Angeles, California. Hang tough, and thanks for listening, everybody.
AP Network News, I'm Dick Iuliano. The death toll from the rioting in Los Angeles has climbed to 18. Violence, arson, and looting raging throughout Los Angeles, even though National Guard troops have arrived in neighborhoods torn by outrage over the Rodney King verdict. As many as 40 fires are burning as a dusk-to-dawn curfew begins to take effect, At least 6 new big blazes ring the downtown. AP's Tony Winton went airborne for a look.
We're flying over Los Angeles, and the city is basically awash in smoke. Everywhere you look, in every direction, there are fires dotting the horizon. Over to my right, I can see a fire fully involved. It seems like a little row of stores, and there's a fire engine pouring water, thousands of gallons of water onto the fire, long ladders doing everything they can to try and keep the fires out.
Much of the city is shut down, bus service halted, pro-sporting events postponed, thousands of businesses and schools closed. Even some flights into Los Angeles International Airport rerouted around columns of smoke. More than 100 Korean-owned stores have been either burned, looted, or robbed. A security guard was fatally shot in a gun battle with looters outside one store. 2,000 National Guard troops armed with M16 rifles are on the streets. California Governor Pete Wilson says the soldiers will help restore order.
The role for the Guard is to support the regular law enforcement officers and perform a security mission so that the officers themselves may make arrests.
Los Angeles Police Chief Darrell Gates and Fire Chief Donald Manning grimly concede that their forces are overwhelmed. 450 people have been injured so far, 300 arrested. The predominantly black South Central section of L.A. is hardest hit, but mobs also rampaged in the mostly non-residential downtown area. And young blacks in Atlanta also had a street-filled angry response to the Rodney King verdict. They attacked whites, and at least 26 people have been injured. The Georgia National Guard is on standby, and Atlanta Mayor Maynard Jackson has imposed an 11 p.m. to 5 a.m. curfew. Members of the jury that acquitted the 4 white Los Angeles policemen say race played no part. But the verdict might have been different, they say, if Rodney King had testified. One juror said she tried holding out for convictions. The jury was made up of 10 whites, 1 Asian, and a Hispanic. This is AP Network News.
Good evening, I'm John Silva. The sad situation in Los Angeles in the aftermath of the Rodney King trial continues to garner reaction around here. Bridgeport attorney Burton Weinstein, who's been involved in a number of cases involving alleged police brutality, says cases like the King affair will be repeated without a better method for civilian complaints against police. Here's the latest update now from the WICC Weather Center. We'll have the clouds, some scattered showers. Things should clear out around midnight with a low in the mid-40s. Mostly sunny, breezy, pleasant, nice day for Friday as we cap things off. High about 65. I'm John Silva on your hometown news and information leader, WICC.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back, folks. Tom Snyder with you here on the Thursday night radio show. It is April 30th, 1992, out of burning Los Angeles, California, as the riots continue. Darkness has now fallen over the city, and there is a curfew in effect from now until dawn. The fires continue being set. The looting continues now in Hollywood. Parts of West Los Angeles, we're told, are now involved. The National Guard still not that evident. As a matter of fact, one of the local anchors was just asking his reporter to find out from a General Thatcher where the National Guard is and when we can expect to see some sense of order being restored on the streets of this troubled city. 2 radio stations have gone off the air because of danger in their neighborhoods. There are major fires in Hollywood and parts of Los Angeles now close to Beverly Hills. There is one ray of sunshine here tonight. The local NBC station, Channel 4, has decided to show the final episode of The Cosby Show in Southern California. They've been on the air nonstop since 5:30 Pacific time yesterday afternoon with fires and looting and rioting and arson, and they are now breaking away to present the final episode of Bill Cosby. The phone lines are down here, so whatever programming we have will depend upon you, the listeners, on the toll-free exchange. By the way, to show you how crazy this looting has become, watching TV this morning, I saw people running into a dry cleaners to loot it, taking clothes that didn't belong to them, taking clothes that they didn't even know what size they were, looting a dry cleaners as the frenzy built on the streets of Southern California all day long. Folks, you've never seen anything like this in your life. I mean, mothers and kids pulling up to a store a thrifty drugstore, a Sears department store, discount swap marts, and the mother dispatching the children into the store almost with a wish list, saying, bring me back, and the kids would bring back various items, put them in the trunk, and the car would drive off. You've never seen anything like this in your life, and it makes you wonder what would happen, or what will happen, when the earthquake comes to Southern California. Good God, can you imagine what would happen if that, please God, not tonight, if there were to be a catastrophic earthquake in Southern California tonight? Good God Almighty. And I don't mean to be a doomsayer, but as I said to you earlier in the first hour of the show tonight, it's almost as if the police are saying, you want non-involvement, we will give you non-involvement. You want no beatings, we will give you no beatings. You want no shooting and no confrontation, we'll give you that, and we will show you exactly what the lawless will do. And the lawless are terrifying this city, this metropolitan area of 15 million people. People are at home tonight, in their houses. All businesses are closed. I won't say that there are no restaurants open in Los Angeles, but there are, I'll bet you, a quarter, hardly any. There's a night spot in the lobby area of this building that is a very lively cocktail bar and restaurant most nights of the year. Tonight it is dark. The streets of Los Angeles are dark. The restaurants are closed. Stores are closed. People are in their homes, huddled before television sets as the local programmers show us the city in flames. It is not a pretty picture. And as I said to Debbie and Paula, and as I say to all of you, we're all terrified here. It's a very, very frightening feeling when you realize that law and order has gone out the window and the barbarians have taken over the streets. We will continue with all of you on the toll-free exchange. Thank God the toll-free line is working. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hi, Tom Bodette from Motel 6 with an idea for the 90s. It's kind of a behavior modification program for anyone who wants to uncomplicate their life. Here's how it works. Come spend the night at Motel 6 and discover how to survive comfortably with only the bare essentials. After all, material things are just a burden we place upon ourselves, creating an endless pursuit to make more so we can get more. And at Motel 6, you won't find any material things around to burden you. No, you get just what you need. A clean, comfortable room where you can relax, take a hot shower, and put things in perspective. And unlike those trendy Zen stress relief clinics, a night at Motel 6 doesn't mean taking a second mortgage on the house. No, all this reality will cost you around $25. More in some places, less in others, but always the lowest prices of any national chain. So get out of the fast lane and come spend the night with us. I'm Swami Tommy for Motel 6, and we'll leave the light on for you.
There's one name in tires I know I can trust.
America's #1 name in tires.
And one tire store I really count on.
Are now at America's #1 tire store. Goodyear comes to Sears. And through Saturday, May 2nd, selected Goodyear tires are introductory priced.
Goodyear tires backed by Sears? That's all I need to hear.
America's #1 tire. Now at America's #1 tire store.
You can count on me. Hey, who's going to back you better than Sears?
For your birthday, an itchy sweater would be the pits. The wrong size hat could give you fits. So after thinking long and hard, I brought you a phone for the porch in the yard. A cordless phone from AT&T, so you can wander around while talking to me.
Give a cordless phone from AT&T with Clarity Plus sound that's virtually static-free. AT&T quality at happy birthday prices.
With a cordless phone, you can roam the halls or lie in the hammock and still take calls.
At AT&T phone centers and other participating retailers.
We are back and joined by Los Angeles City Councilman Mark Ridley-Thomas, who has been a guest on this program before, who's on the way now to do some work in his own district. And I appreciate the fact, Mark, that you took time to call us. Good evening, and what can you tell us about the situation vis-a-vis the curfew? Are people off the streets now?
By and large, people are off the streets, but there are those who persist in engaging in unlawful activity, and they seem to think this is a kind of sport of sorts at this point, and they are happily, merrily looting buildings, and it's just the most unimaginable thing that I can think of.
Would it be fair to say that this does go quite beyond protest to the decision handed down yesterday in the beating case? I mean, this.
Well, yeah, it goes beyond it on the one hand, but I think we cannot lose sight of the fact that it was precipitated. That is, this display of lawlessness and the like was precipitated by the jury coming forth with verdicts that were just totally beyond belief in terms of allowing those officers to walk away without
even a slap on the wrist, and
without anything.
Right, and I agree with you. But I think that has now become a separate matter. I think that verdict yesterday indicates that there is something wrong with the criminal justice system.
Yes.
And I think it indicates that it has been weighted against black people in America for some time.
Right.
And I think it indicates that there has been a lack of respect for the value of black life and black achievement in this country. I think all those things are true. And I think that's a problem that we will have to address. But before we address that, my friend, I think we have got to get the streets of this city back under control.
I have no doubt in my mind about that.
Now, let me ask you about your own office. It was torched today, was it not?
It was last evening, actually, and I'm deeply dismayed by that. It was a brand new, a newly renovated office, 8,000 square feet, city services for the first time, right in the district. It was one of a kind in the city, a model for the city. It is gone as a result of senseless acts of violence by persons who I would dare say don't give a damn about the quality of life of our community by virtue of what they did in terms of burning not only my offices, but the way in which they are destroying this community.
As a matter of fact, I would say they don't give a damn about anybody or anything.
Well, they don't respect authority.
You sound like you're angry, and I think you should be, by the way.
Well, I'm angered by the verdict. I'm angered by the events that led up to it. I'm angered by that which has followed, and yet I'm obliged to be constructive in my expression of my anger. And I think we can constructively protest the verdict. We can say what we wish in terms of the history of police abuse in the Los Angeles Police Department. I think we can do those things without being anti-police, because we know that the police department serves a very vital role. I'm further concerned, though, Tom, by the frequency of the question about why it took so long for LAPD to get on the scene, specifically at Florence and Normandy.
And for those listeners around the country, that is at the very center of South Central Los Angeles, where the trouble began last evening or yesterday afternoon.
Yeah, now called the epicenter of this riotous activity that has taken place.
Well, you raise a great question, Mark. Where have the police been all day today?
Well, I think it cannot be underestimated how thinly stretched the police department is at this point, which is a different consideration when thinking about why they weren't on the scene much more quickly last evening. Those are two separate items, but we have a whole bunch of unanswered questions at this point. But at the same time, there is one thing that's absolutely clear. We must arrest this problem. This city is being torn asunder. Lawlessness abounds. It is a joke for people to run in and out of stores when police officers turn their back. They are facing no real consequences, and at the same time, persons such as myself who represent districts that are largely inner city districts will now have to face the fact that these districts have to be rebuilt built, and it is going to be a long time coming before that can happen. We have not yet recuperated from what?
That's correct. That
1965, and here we are compounding the situation even more seriously than was the case in the original instance.
Let me ask you a question, and I know you have to go. I know you're busy tonight. What would happen if looters were shot on sight, Mark?
Well, I think it would offend the sensibilities of right-thinking people. This is not a situation where looters have to be shot on sight. It's a humane way to contain and manage the problem.
How?
The National Guard needs to establish a presence. It hasn't done that. The 2,000 National Guardsmen that were supposed to be deployed, they haven't gotten in place yet. They're delinquent. When they post up and establish their presence, clear the area, the people won't return. When the police come, the looters leave. It is when the police leave that the looters return. The National Guard should stay there until the entirety of the city is under control again. You don't have to shoot one person. In 1965, it was with the intervention of the National Guard that the death toll escalated, and we should avoid that at all costs.
Mark, I know you're a busy man. I thank you for your time, and I wish you well. Thanks for calling tonight, sir.
Thank you, and appreciate your work.
All right, thank you. Mark Ridley-Thomas, member of the Los Angeles City Council, wondering, along with many people here in Southern California, where is the National Guard? We will continue after these messages from the local stations.
WICC Service 60, Southern Connecticut's news and information leader. Good evening. Tonight's daily number is 578. That's 578. The play 4 is 7919. That's 7919. Lotto jackpot for tomorrow night is worth $1.5 million. Learn more about history with miniatures. WICC 60 welcomes you to the Trumbull Historical Society's one-day exhibit, Saturday afternoon at 1856 Huntington Turnpike in Trumbull, and the kids will love it. From the WICC Weather Center, cloudy skies tonight, scattered showers, lows near 45. Sunshine tomorrow with highs near 65. And for Saturday, morning showers, then afternoon sun, milder temperatures, a high nearing 65 to 70. WICC Service 60 is your hometown news and information leader with your old pal Jim Buchanan and the Afternoon Show. Stay on top of all the hot gossip and the day's news, traffic, and weather on your way home tomorrow afternoon, right here on Service 60 WICC.
It's a smuggler's auction, and your chance to bid on previously confiscated merchandise perhaps beyond your wildest dreams. Diamonds, furs, coins, jewelry, oriental carpets, porcelain, TVs, VCRs. These items and more are seized every day by various law enforcement agencies around the world. Now, previously confiscated merchandise, combined with items from lending institutions and business closings, must be liquidated at once at a smuggler's auction. It takes place for one day and one day only. This Saturday, exhibition starts at 10 a.m. and the auction at 11 a.m. at the Ramada Shelton. Be there for this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to bid on this mostly new merchandise and other valuables of all types, including rare American gold and silver coins, unbelievable jewelry, fur coats, oriental carpets, art, TVs, Remington bronzes, crystal, and more. That's the Smuggler's Auction this Saturday at the Ramada Shelton, exit 12 off Route 8 to Bridgeport Avenue. Turn left to the hotel. Terms: cash, Visa, MasterCard, 10% buyer's premium, $3 per person admission. Conducted by JLA International Auction Company, 800-393-UBID.
Come on, I just got called up from AAA this morning. I need all the help I can get.
Well, between innings, why don't you run out to McDonald's and pick up a 5-pack of the new Tops McDonald's Gold Cards for only 99 cents when you buy a delicious extra value meal.
Tops McDonald's Gold Card?
Sure. A limited edition series from Tops, available only at McDonald's. Track 2! You can study up on 44 of baseball's top stars and rookies.
Like me.
Not. Now, for a limited time, a pack of 5 Tops McDonald's Gold Cards is just 99 cents when you buy any extra value meal featuring large fries and a medium Coke Classic, or $1.79 with any other purchase.
Cool. Man, I wish I could go to McDonald's right now.
What you want is what you get. Strike 3!
Hey, thanks, Unc. You want anything from Mickey D's?
Why can't they all be rookies?
This promotion is authorized by Major League Baseball Properties and licensed by the Major League Baseball Players Association.
Plus tax. Prices may vary while supplies last at participating McDonald's.
You're on the radio show, and I'm Tom Snyder on Service 60 WICC.
Okay, we are back, and here is Roy in Swansea, New Hampshire. Roy, you've been waiting a long time. I appreciate your waiting. Thanks for hanging on. Good evening.
Yes, sir. Listen, I'm a half a century old, and I've gone through 175,000 clippings, and I can't find any case. And I got a couple points here if I may make, and I'll make them quick and get off.
Okay.
I've gone through the 175,000 clippings, and I can find no place where a Negro jury has found a Caucasian guilty and the Caucasians have rioted. Do you know that? Not one case.
Mm-hmm.
Now,
but that doesn't have anything to do with what's happening in Southern California.
Well, that's what I mean. I mean, they're totally lawless. And what are people going to do if the police don't help you? I mean, if these people the innocent aren't armed, they're going to get themselves killed.
Oh, I understand. And by the way, the people who are rioting in Los Angeles this has no connection whatsoever with the jury verdict yesterday. I mean, there are people being interviewed by press out here as they come out of a drugstore with a bag full of booty, and they're saying, "What are you doing? Why are you doing this?" "Oh, well, it's fun. Oh, well, it's a good time." And they don't even know who Rodney King is, for heaven's sake, most of these thugs in the street.
Well, I ask you, what is this going to do? Is this going to make Caucasians trust them more? No, it's going to reestablish segregation. I'll guarantee it.
This plays right into the hands of the racists. This plays right into the hands of the bigots. All those people who have stereotyped blacks for years as nothing more than robbers and thugs will look at this and say, "See, we were right." Except there's one thing wrong with that. If you could see what's happening out here, my friend, these aren't just black people coming out of these stores. These are white people in almost equal numbers. These are Hispanic people in equal numbers. These are people of all races who are doing this robbing and who are doing this fire setting out here.
Well, some people up here think it's the beginning of a racial war because it's being sparked in different cities, and it doesn't look like it's spontaneous, but like it's been planned.
It is. Well, I'll tell you, it's beginning to look here in Southern California as if somebody had a master plan. Good heavens, these buildings that are being torched are fully involved within 45 seconds of ignition. So you know that something has been poured around before they set the match.
Well, some people up here are beginning to arm, and if they figure it's going to be a racial war, they're not going to be caught like L.A. And, you know, this is the feeling of people up in this area, and, you know, we're pretty far away from that kind of stuff. And they're thinking it might be a racial war, and people are arming. And I personally don't blame them.
It's very frightening. It is.
Yeah, just one more thing, too.
Yes, sir.
Somebody said this, this is what somebody's thought on this. I don't agree with it, but this is what some people are thinking now. The only way we're going to contain it is repeal the 14th Amendment. You know what that is?
Wow.
That's repealing the Slavery Amendment.
Wow.
They said that's the only way to contain the beast.
No.
So this is what the people are saying. That's not right,
Awful.
but this is what they're thinking.
Just awful. You see, and if you could go to these people, these idiots who are ransacking Los Angeles and say, "Do you people have any idea what you're doing? Do you have any idea of the harm that you're creating here that goes beyond a burned building, that goes beyond a stolen water bottle?" I appreciate your call, Roy, and I appreciate your waiting.
Just one real quick question. What's going to happen when businesses refuse to go back to those areas?
Well, businesses have refused to go back to those areas for the last 27 years. As a matter of fact, listen to this one. And Roy, I got to say goodnight to you after this.
Okay.
Okay. Thanks for calling, pal.
Yes, sir.
Bye-bye. For years, the people in the Crenshaw district in South Central Los Angeles complained that no major supermarket chains would build a decent store there. So one of the chains finally built a store with good meat and good produce and good dairy, etc., 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 instead of all the crap they were getting. One of the chains finally put a decent store in there, and guess what? Today they burned it down. They torched it. They've been waiting 27 years for a grocery store, and today these idiots torched it. David in Coral Springs, Florida. Thank you for waiting. Good evening.
Hello, Tom.
Hi, David.
Hi. You know, this is quite a somber evening for all of us, isn't it?
It's a terrible night for America. It's just a terrible, terrible night for America.
It's just, it makes me, it's just
sick.
Sickening.
It's just sickening.
You know, Tom, earlier, two things. Earlier, you interviewed a nameless juror, a woman who was on the jury.
Yes, sir.
And I don't know, kind of, I guess she sounds to me like a pseudo-intellectual, because, first of all, she had said that Rodney had drunk a humongous amount of liquor.
Yeah.
But she was on the jury, yet he drove 100 miles an hour or more. And secondly, when she ended up a conversation with you, and this is the pseudo-intellectual, she said, he drove 100 miles an hour.
Wait, what's happening? What's happening?
Tom?
Yeah.
And then secondly, she said she was just trying to put a little levity into the situation.
Yeah, I didn't understand that at all, and I didn't pick up on it because what
I know you didn't.
Yeah.
Well, the reason I'm calling the basic thing is, do you think we will ever learn why the prosecuting attorney did not put Rodney King on the stand? Will he ever tell the truth, or is this a Watergate? What is this? It's terrible. I can't See, this is one of the essences of the whole thing. Why didn't he put him on the stand?
Well, I think that the prosecution team was terrified of what he might say once he got up there. And, of course, once you put him on the stand, the redirect from the defense comes against him, cross-examination, and they could blow him out of the water. Now they can bring up his entire criminal record, they can bring up his entire past, and all of that becomes part and parcel of the Rodney King beating case. They didn't want that to happen. But I don't think we're ever going to know the real reason. I don't think it'll happen. David, I thank you for the call. I appreciate your waiting, and I appreciate your listening.
Listen, I'll wait to talk to you anytime, Tom.
All right, thank you,
Stay
sir.
in there.
All right, pal.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Back after station identification. Thanks, everybody. You're listening to Service 60 WICC. When you get that burning feeling of acid indigestion, what is it you want? Relief, fast. That's why you should know about Riopan Plus 2. It starts working as soon as it hits your stomach. In fact, lab tests show that Riopan Plus 2's dual-action formula starts neutralizing acid on contact in less than 3 seconds. And it's sodium-free. Choose either mint or cherry flavor, liquid or tablets, and use only as directed. The next time you want fast relief from acid indigestion, remember Riopan Plus 2. We are back on the air from Los Angeles, joined by Lieutenant John Duncan from the LAPD. Lieutenant John, thanks for coming on. Good evening. I know you're very busy. I appreciate your time.
You bet.
Let me ask you about the curfew. I'm watching Channel 7 here bouncing around. It seems like for a city under curfew, there are an awful lot of people on the streets. Why is that?
Well, this is Los Angeles. This is drive time. The curfew was not meant to impede people from coming home from work or for those people who have to going to work. What it was meant to do was restrict people from unnecessarily being on the street.
Gotcha.
And in public places without reasonable justification.
A number of us, including myself, have been wondering all day how we can watch people going into stores looting while police officers stand across the street and watch it. Can you help me on that? I just couldn't understand why there was no intervention.
Well, the situation is clearly a matter of resources here, and when our officers begin to make arrests, every time they make arrest, it takes them effectively off the street, and where they're no longer a viable enforcement tool out there, and clearly the sheer numbers of violators, we wouldn't have an officer left on the street if we started arresting people en masse. So we're trying to restrict our enforcement in that term to the really aggravated circumstances.
Let me ask you something here. There was a tremendous uproar over the Rodney King thing.
Yes.
Because of that, are the police exercising unusual restraint in these possible confrontations with citizens?
No, the police are exercising that restraint and degree of professionalism that we expect of our officers all the time. I'm not sure if you're aware of the tape that Chief Gates made prior to all this, prior to the verdicts being rendered, where he reminded officers of his expectations and the community's expectations of them in the event of something of this nature. We expect our officers to act professionally and to use restraint and to use only that force that is proper and necessary to conduct their police operations.
I understand that, but I'm sure you appreciate, as a resident of Southern California, as well as one of its peace officers, that Los Angeles people are getting very frightened. They see this mob, and it is a mob, advancing now into Hollywood, into parts of West Los Angeles. They see them entering very familiar territory. This is not something happening down in Watts or South Central L.A. This is happening all over town right now. And they're wondering when we are going to begin to see some kind of effort on the part of the combined forces of LAPD, the sheriffs, and the National Guard to begin to get this thing under control.
Well, I think while it's not clearly evident in the video that we're seeing on television, that's beginning to happen now. The National Guard is being deployed. We have actually 1,400 National Guard troops that have been deployed to the various operational bureaus now.